Hey everybody, welcome to the first Ronin Town Hall. Uh, I'm Rusta, head of Ronin Growth. We're here with Jiho, should recognize him, and Fuktai, our head researcher, and also the one most involved with a lot of our technical implementations coming up with the L2 migration. So it's nice to see you guys. We've got about 100 people in the audience. We thought we would have a cozy Discord stage for this because we have some slides to share. We have some exciting news. I mean, we're excited about it, and yeah, we thought we could just kick this off this way. So we'll start by I'll share a little bit about the Ronin Vanguard and just some kind of recent changes and things, and then we've got a run of show that's going to include run tokenomics upgrades, the L2 migration, proof of distribution details, some ecosystem highlights, and some other stuff. And we'll have some time for a Q&A at the end also. So first town hall, this is part of our Ronin Vanguard initiative. So you might have seen that the Ronin team is tweeting a little bit more. We've introduced ourselves. This is just the beginning. This is just one step. Obviously, we want to be a lot more connected, a lot more present. But you go day by day. So thanks for everyone for joining from the Ronin Vanguard here. We've got Jace, we've got Jatster, we've got Pos2, we've got some of our guys on the call, Jatster as well. Yeah, why don't we jump right into what is coming with Ron Tokenomics. Jiho's got some slides to share. Hope you guys will be excited. We're pretty excited about this, and let's jump in.
All right, what up, everybody? This is Jiho, and yeah, let's talk about what's coming for Ronin, and especially with the L2 migration on the way. Okay, so this is like the problem statement. So Ronin is currently home to the top titles in crypto gaming. You got teams like Moku, Cambria, Fableborn, Ragnarok Online. You got Angry Dynamites, Fishing Frenzy. Of course, there's always Axie. But so the content is good, but the tokenomics have not been working. Why? The tokenomics are actually based on what worked 5 years ago when we made or created the RON token. It's not updated for what we're seeing working in the market now. So today, right, the purpose of this meeting is to share an updated vision for Ron's and Ronin's tokenomics as we move towards the L2 migration, right? So we're moving towards the L2 migration. Tentatively, the target is for late March. So if you guys are interested in a timeline, the tentative target is late March. There are a couple more things that we need to finalize before we officially lock a certain date in, but the current target is late March, so the end of this month. So this is a graphic that really summarizes the changes that we're looking to make to Ronin with the L2 migration, right? So the old model was that we were using validators to back the security of the chain. Now we're going to be migrating to an Ethereum L2, so we'll have Ethereum actually securing the chain. In the past, we had passive staking emissions. Now we're going towards this merit-based system of builder rewards, as well as making sure that the treasury is capturing value, getting more powerful as more activity happens on the chain. In the past, the token had weak value capture from on-chain activities and things that are actually happening on-chain. We want to upgrade that and make sure that the token is actually reflective of what's happening on the network. So, one big thing that we've seen is that, right, even though Ron is currently at a much higher market cap than it was even at 10 cents, Ron is at a much higher market cap than it was at the bottom of the last bear market. Why? Because Ron inflation has been very high. So when we made the initial design for the RON tokens, right? Inflation was designed to be pretty high in the early years and then gradually go down over time. However, right, like the assumptions that we had made back then was based on demand that was much higher during, right, the end of the last cycle, right? The 2020, 2021, beginning of 2022 cycle, demand for tokens was much higher. So, right, we made the inflation, I would say we made a mistake. We designed the RON inflation to be much too high at the beginning. And the good news, right, is that with the L2 model, we'll actually be able to use Ethereum for security, and we'll be able to, right, use Ethereum for security rather than having to have our own validators. And rather than having to pay for security via RON inflation, right, we'll just be able to run the security of the network without the validators, right? So what does that mean? That means that this has been announced before, but we're sunsetting RON staking in the validator system with the move to an L2 and moving towards that proof of distribution system. So, this will get RON inflation under control, but just by solving the supply side of the equation doesn't mean that anything will measurably change, right? Obviously, it can help, but you need to solve both supply and demand. So let's talk about the demand side. So what we want to do is create new sources of treasury inflows, right? So everyone knows about the treasury. The treasury is this pool of capital that's being used to back the value of the RON token, right? We did a buyback with the RON treasury. The treasury can also be used to do things like provide liquidity and farm yield, things of this nature. So, one of the things that we've seen is that the current revenue streams for the treasury are low. I believe that we've actually innovated a lot by, right, having Katana's fee go into the treasury, by having a portion of the Ronin marketplace fee go into the Ronin treasury, right? We were from the beginning of Ronin rightly anticipating that demand for gas wouldn't be enough utility for a protocol token in the long run. So we're doubling down on that idea where, right, it used to be that 2% of the Ronin market fee went to Sky Mavis and 0.5% went to the treasury. We're now gonna make that a 50-50 cut. So imagine, right, like a team like Moku, a team like Fableborn or Ragnarok Online, they're putting up a ton of Ronin market volume, but in the past, only 0.5% of that was actually going into the treasury. We're more than doubling that percentage now, so that if games on Ronin are doing well, they're putting up NFT volume, that's going to create more treasury inflows. Okay. So another thing, right? With the old validator system, the gas fees were predominantly going towards the validators, and that wasn't actually helping solve the supply side of the token. So what we'll be doing is actually taking, right, the gas fees and putting those now in the treasury, right? So there are small costs for that, right? There's the blob fees, which are basically the cost to post the data on Ethereum, as well as, right, the optimism cut for using the OP stack. Okay, so then boom, right? Like, since we're not going to be having the staking rewards anymore, the 90 million RON that we had allocated for staking rewards, we can now put those in the treasury, and, right, the governance process, which will be now using RON, will be able to determine what we end up doing with these RON tokens.
As a RON holder, right, when I look through all of this, I get excited because to me, what I see is, okay, the treasury is going to get stronger. The treasury is going to get more RON. It's going to get more inflows. That's great. And there'll be less RON just kind of floating around, right? And so to me, that's good news. And so as a RON holder, I'm happy about this stuff.
Yeah, so the main thing that changes here is that this creates a fundamental link between the product success on the network, the teams building on the network, and token value. And so yeah, basically, RON will be getting more rare, but RON will also be getting more utility because there will be more flows into the treasury, which can then be used to do things like buyback RON and distribute RON to holders in the long run. All right, so let's talk about proof of distribution. So, one of the things that I've noticed recently or over the last year is people are applying for grants. They're like, why is my grant not being approved, or why is my grant taking so long to be reviewed? So basically, the idea of the proof of distribution system is that it will automate the system of rewarding builders. So the protocol will be using AI, basically identifying which teams are adding value to the protocol, which teams are actually putting up metrics, TVL, gas consumption, user growth, ERC20 volume, NFT volume, and giving them grants. So the initial allocation will be 5 million RON per year. So that's way more than we were giving out actually in terms of builder grants. So yeah. Futai, do you want to add anything else about the?
Yeah. So on the proof distribution side, right? So the thing that we are doing is we look back at the current data of Ronin of any other ecosystem to see which metric is sort of contribute to what ecosystem grow, and we use a machine learning model which is sort of AI tool to identify the metric which is contribute the most to the growth of ecosystem, and then we're gonna have a automatic system to reward the builder based on those metrics. And yeah, so the metric is objectively we're gonna have a builder score that calculated based on the metric, and then the reward will be given probably seasonally to the builder, so that yeah, they can use the reward to keep investing to their product, they can also use that to attract more users and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the cool thing about the builder incentives is that these can be used to do things like attract users. They can be used as user incentives, right? Maybe they can use them to also fund development, and also there's more opportunities for builders where we're gonna also be deploying BRON pretty soon. We're gonna run an initial experiment with Moku around BRON. So Moku Grand Arena, announcing that they'll be the first official builder running experiments with BRON. We'll also be able to learn a lot from that. So the cool thing, is so someone in the audience mentioned, hey, we had the Axie score on Axie. Now we have the builder score, right? And actually one of the ideas is to kind of start exploring how builders can leverage that reputation score with the BRON system, right? So for example, imagine if we gave out BRON to users, and then when they spent them to a builder, maybe the builder could have some benefits due to their builder score, their builder reputation, when they actually receive that BRON, like a multiplier or something like that.
So yeah, I see a question in the chat, how the builder score work. So yeah, I think I mentioned this like earlier, a little bit earlier, is that we're gonna have a set of metric for the builder, right? So it is like the one who build a product on Ronin, build game on Ronin, build the app on Ronin. They can deploy some contract on Ronin, and user interact with those contract. And then we're gonna use the on-chain metric of the like deploy the app on Ronin, and then we're gonna calculate the builder score based on the metric. So this is more on like the set of like builder who are building on Ronin. Then we're gonna give the builder score based on that. So it's also like something we are also looking into is I think like Ziho also mentioned this earlier is about the honor score, right? So like this is something we are also working on of the like on the user side when they perform certain activity on Ronin, they're gonna kind of like increase their honor score, and then we are also like exploring. It's nothing confirmed that, but like it potentially has been some like reward of BRON for the user with a higher honor score, and then the BRON can be spent into like the ecosystem when the builder can apply to for user to spend BRON in their product. Then we sort of like creating a loop of like builder users, and it's sort of like an incentive loop for everyone to build on and perform like action on Ronin.
Yeah, so some leaks, like we don't want BRON and Honor to kind of take over, but take over this conversation. But these are things that we're making some progress on. Definitely more on the BRON side, and because we have BRON, that also opens up to do experiments with Honor, right? Imagine, based on your Honor, you might get some BRON reward, right? Some very small or rewards to start testing it out, to test out some apps. I also saw some comments in the audience like, is our rewards for Moku Grand Arena going to be in VRON? That's not the plan, right? The idea is to test out some systems where, right, people who are depositing new capital, right, people depositing to Ronin from other chains would get some BRON as a deposit bonus, right? So it's kind of like, right, imagine when you make your first bet on FanDuel, for example, right? You get like a deposit bonus, right? So the idea is to use BRON kind of as like some sort of a deposit bonus or a bridging bonus rather than as a replacement for rewards, at least, for Grand Arena. So I don't want to like, talk too much about what they're doing for now, but didn't want you guys to get confused or think that, the rewards for Grand Arena are being changed to BRON or something like that. So. Okay. So yeah, so one of the things, right, is that, hey, like, since we're not going to have validators, we're not going to have governing validators, how are we going to do governance, right? It used to be that the governing validators could submit proposals and approve the proposals. Like, what is that process going to look like now? So I think this is good news. I think this is good news for everyone else in the network who wasn't a governing validator. I think that system was maybe a little bit unfair, to be honest, right? But it was something that I think worked for the time. But we've matured, and you don't really see other chains using something like that. So I think it was maybe innovative at the beginning, but we've definitely outgrown that framework. And we've talked to all the governing validators as well, and they're on board with this new direction. And so basically what will happen is that governance will shift to a RON-weighted framework. And so this is kind of like, right, if you have RON, you could use that RON to approve or vote against different proposals, right? So what will be the scope of governance, right? So this is something that people always ask, like, can I propose this or whatever? So the initial, at least, scope of governance will be control over the treasury, right? So also proof of distribution adjustments, and right, token burns, right? You'll also be able to propose, like deploying treasury assets into DeFi to earn yield, and the treasury right now has a bunch of different tokens. It has Ron, it has ETH, it has USDC, it has a lot of the tokens of the products on the chain as well. So it's like, oh, if right, let's say liquidity for a certain token pair is really low on Katana, the treasury could help that out. There's more liquidity, there's more swapping. That also ends up coming back to the treasury via higher swap fees, which is resulting in more revenue for the treasury. And so yeah, so that's also, that's a change that we will be making with the upcoming migration. Okay, so basically to summarize, right, the old model was validator centric, it's outdated, and it was, I think, helpful. It was good or good enough maybe, in the early days of the network, but it's not good enough for now. So we're moving to Ethereum. Now that we're moving to this Ethereum L2 situation, we no longer need the validator system. That also means that we get to save a lot of budget on security. We no longer have to overpay for security, and we can use a lot of those rewards that we were using to pay for security to incentivize builders, incentivize users through systems like proof of distribution, the honor system, and BRON. Right. Also, right, we had a situation where we have apps that are winning and succeeding on the network, but that wasn't showing up with the RON price, right? So one, we're fixing the supply issue, and then we're now bolstering the streams of revenue for the treasury, right? Where the more activity there is on the chain, the more successful winning apps there are on the chain, the better the token should perform in the long run, right? So we're fixing that relationship. And there are also, right, one thing that we're also exploring is there are a lot of tokens, right? So like, for example, the power token, when these teams come onto Ronin, right, they will give some, right, grant of their tokens to Sky Mavis. So one of the things that we're thinking about is like, right, like we have all these tokens, and we believe that there's a way to also better align, right, the tokens that we're getting from these teams when we invest in them or get grants from them to the treasury, right? So that's something that's also being explored, and we'll share more on that in time, right? So I think that's been an interesting thing, right? Is that, oh, power is doing really well, even if you use the price on Ronin, right? Which could be potentially the actual real price. Even if you use the Ron price, the Ronin price of power, it's like, holy cow, like this thing is worth a ton. Fableborn is built on Ronin. Shouldn't there be more of a value capture or a relationship there? We believe yes, and actually, right, because we got these grants, when people come on the chain, and right, actually a lot of chains, right, it's like, oh, the chains need to pay the teams to come build, but actually we have like a good situation where, right, like we are also getting grants from the teams, and because, right, the best builders, they want to come to Ronin and they want support from the network. So that's something that we're also working on figuring out. There, that's very innovative. There's never really been a situation where that has happened before, but that's something that we're looking into. And me and Trung are really interested in solving that issue because we think that that can be also a really innovative solution.
One thing that I wanted to add too is if you are a builder, right, and you're looking for a reason to come or to build on Ronin, right? All of this stuff gives you a lot more reasons. It aligns you, it brings you closer to the community and the actual users you're going to have, right? It fixes this issue of, hey, I'd like to apply for a grant, or I'd like to do this. Oh, that's going to take 3 months to process or whatever. The reward system, the incentive system is automated, right? And you also have tools, right? We're talking about BRON as an experimental thing. We're going to have this sort of first go with Moku, and we think it's a smart use case that they're in the way they're implementing it. But in our perfect world, right, everything we're doing is here to make it easier for builders to do what they want to do, make it easier for the community to see the connection between, oh, this builder is doing this, and this is what's happening, to my game, to Ron. We're trying to strengthen that connection. It will take time, right? But this is the direction that we're headed in right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I believe that we're introducing a lot of novel mechanisms here, right? Proof of distribution. This is something that we haven't seen before, but it makes sense, right? It's like chains used to have to incentivize security, but actually the benefit of the L2 situation is that you can kind of piggyback or freeload off of Ethereum security, right? That sounds unfair, but why wouldn't you do it if you can? You can freeload off of the Ethereum security while right now using the budget that you're used to have to use for security to incentivize builders, or right to also help fix your supply issue. So that's an innovative thing. I also want to stress that chains now talk about how the chains, people are now talking about how chains need to build their own products. We were very, very early to this idea, right? Why? Because we understood, hey, we built Axie and then we use that to bootstrap Ronin. We need to continue building things on top of Ronin because, right, like we may be the ones who understand the audience the best. And right, like chains need killer apps, and you cannot just only hope that people will come and build on your chain. You actually have to set an example by building things yourself. And if you're building those things, you also want to align those products with the success of your chain. And we were very early to this idea, right? That's why we put a part of all DEX volume on Ronin via Katana into the treasury. That's why we put a portion of all Ronin market or NFT volume into the treasury. So that is now being validated, where a lot of chains are proposing this, thinking that they're being innovative. But we were really early to this idea, and now we're doubling down on that. And so, yeah, I also think that people will be interested in the new governance system, and that will allow each of you guys to have more of a voice and more of a effect on Ronin, right? So people are like, oh, right, like, isn't there going to be less? Like, I liked the staking system. What, like, I like the staking system. Why should I hold Ron now? Well, now, right, like we're making the treasury a lot stronger, and we will be increasing the velocity at which we do things with the treasury. And because we're now going to have this smoother voting system where it's much easier to make proposals and vote on them. Decide users to collaborate with protocols such as Aave. Yes, I mean, so yeah, like that's actually what the Axie treasury has already voted, right, to basically stake the ETH in the Axie treasury. And so yeah, Aave is kind of hostile towards L2s. They said that they're actually not really supporting L2 deployments anymore. But yeah, maybe something like Morpho, for example. I'm more of a fan of Morpho, to be honest, these days. That's just a personal thing because there's a lot of issues with Aave right now. Vote to have tokens such as USDT. Yeah. So the thing is, right, like people will have to learn, right? Like USDT integration can be like really expensive. Like we've talked to them before, and it's like can cost millions of dollars to have USDT integrated on the chain, right? But yeah. How often will the proof of distribution rewards be distributed? Okay.
I already answered that. Yeah, it's like
Every month? Okay.
There's also a question about who would be eligible for POD rewards. I'm pretty sure it's everybody, right?
Yeah,
There's no
it is.
grandfathered. Yeah.
It's everybody. Like as long as the project is still active and you're still using that, then they should have something.
Kagi says, when are we doing QRPH? Yeah, we're making progress on that. And there are actually like two new teams building on Ronin that are kind of incubated by Sky Mavis that I've talked to recently. One is like, they're exploring doing like a payments app using QRPH, right? So kind of like a normie wallet. And then the other is related to physical collectibles, right? So imagine what is like Tether's business model? Tether's business model is tokenizing dollars. So you take physical dollars or meat space dollars and turn them into digital dollars, right? This team is like looking at doing Tether's business model, but for Pokemon, One Piece, League of Legends, right? Riftbound cards. So. Any plan to boost the Weth-Ron liquidity pair? I mean, so the thing is, the Treasury should be able to do that. The Treasury, right? Like, a lot of these things around liquidity can be done, by the Treasury and over time. Okay. Should we have some questions, or do you want to go into the Q&A now?
Yeah, we can do that. We had, yeah, let's do it. If you guys have any questions about anything we talked about, so Ron tokenomics, L2 migration, BRON, even questions about the ecosystem, this is the time to ask. After the town hall, you can also reach out to us, reach out to Ronin Vanguard members. We want to answer your questions if there's something we missed. And I'm pretty sure we'll be able to have another one of these sometime soon. But we covered a lot of ground. So post your questions in the chat and we can keep answering them. Yeah, just go for it. So they're coming in. Awesome. Any idea of the new inflation rate? Maybe Gio, you guys can specifically speak to that. It's much lower, right? The big picture is it's much lower.
Yeah, I actually don't really have a number on top of my mind, but I think it's more of the emission right now is through the staking. Then like after we cutting that, and then we move some of that to the probability shifting reward, and then maybe later it also depend on the future of the governance to both on like the configuration, right? So I think it's like reduced by the magnitude of like time something, but it's also depend on the future government voting. So yeah.
My understanding is that we're like almost reducing inflation by around 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so around 80% reduction in inflation. Last year, the inflation was around 25%, right? So it was like 40%, then around 25 to 30%. So, right, we're targeting around 8% inflation now. So, right, that was kind of the issue, right? People were like, oh, why is, right, Ronin is doing well, but like, why is the token going down? Big issue was, right, the amount of inflation that was happening, the fact that we were running basically like as an L1 or a sidechain with all these additional costs.
Yeah, so I think like to put into another package that like it's also like we also had an inflow into the treasury, right? So it will be like the inflation that we unlocking more token, and then also the sort of a deflation when the treasury generate more revenue, right? So it will be like also balance out between the two. So like our ultimate goal is to have the inflow to the treasury is higher than the emission that we are emit to like grow the ecosystem and like basically the inflow of the treasury is higher than what we emit to reward to everyone on the network.
So we've got a question from Mr. Math as well about the burn mechanism. So maybe Mr. Math, maybe this can help. That's a nice name. Maybe this can help understand a little bit, help you understand a little bit. So the way that I see it right now is the Ron rewards that we have, right? This might also answer MetaTwin's question. The Ron rewards that we have are going out to validators. And why are they going out to validators? They're going out to validators because we need their help to secure Ronin, right? And if you're staking Ron, what you're getting is a portion of their rewards that they've earned for securing Ronin and improving the security. Right? So once we move to proof of distribution, and once we migrate to Ethereum, the idea is that Ethereum is going to be providing that service. So we have all this RON, and ask yourself, should we, if Ethereum is securing Ronin, should we give the RON to Ethereum? Doesn't really make sense. The way we're looking at it is, instead of rewarding people who help secure the network, we're going to reward builders. And while this doesn't directly burn RON, it changes how much RON is out there and in whose hands, right? So now we have more RON going to people who are really committed to making the network better, to growing the ecosystem, to building, on our chain. And so there is no built-in burn mechanism or explicit burn, like this RON is going -1 or something like that, right? But you can think of it as, right now there's a lot of RON going to people who are ensuring security, and soon we're going to be able to do that with Ethereum's help and direct those rewards to people who are going to grow the network as opposed to secure it. And so maybe that can help you understand how that affects RON a little bit. It's not an explicit burn, but it's getting more RON into a very different set of hands for different reasons, right? Which is growth mainly.
Okay. Kegi says, "What about creators?" I mean, I believe that the best Web3 gaming creators on Ronin, and we actually want to expand beyond Twitter, to be honest. So we're working on some ideas to basically reward people a little bit better for what they're doing on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok specifically. Yeah, incentivize YouTube, exactly. That's also where everyone, basically Twitter incentives, Twitter incentives, InfoFi, that's been banned, right? So this is now, right? To be honest, Kaido asked us a long time ago, hey, do you want to work with us? And we said that we wouldn't do anything on Twitter because we didn't believe it made sense to incentivize Twitter content that much compared to video content, right? So what we want to do is move towards incentives for the best video content on platforms beyond X. So yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, let me also kind of talk about some of the changes or how I'm thinking about things from my perspective, right? So I'm a large RON holder, and I didn't really see too much, right? I was a little bit unsure about the direction of Ron. Obviously, I have a lot of control over it, and I can help. But when I look at the supply dynamics, I didn't really want to buy more because you look at the schedule, and you're just like, okay, the inflation rate is 30%. Why would I want to buy an asset that has a 30% inflation rate? That's also similar things with AXS. AXS is now around 8 to 10%, and Ron will right now be around 8 to 10%. Boom! Right now you have an asset with 8 to 10% inflation rate, and more demand, right, coming from fixing the value accrual mechanisms and getting more money in the treasury, right? The money in the treasury, right, can be used for buybacks, it can be used for burns, it can be used for distributions to holders, right? It really kind of depends on governance, but what are the largest RON holders are going to want to use the treasury for things that are going to invest or compound and benefit, right, RON holders in the long run, or even sometimes in the short run. So that's the way that I think about it, right? Is as a large RON holder, boom, inflation's gonna be down, great. I want to hold it more, and also, right, there's now a better incentive alignment between the applications on the chain and the RON holders. That sounds a lot better than, right, what used to be what was happening before. Okay, Momentor has a good question, but what about security on game makers and Ron specifically? What happened in Pixieland? Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of teams that have come to Web3 gaming and failed, right? What do we call these people? We call them losers, right? But what do you want? Like, so Sky Mavis and the Ronin team, right? We want to be welcoming to builders, but we actually are very careful about who we, right, give our gold stamp of approval, right? So, you will notice that I only talk about, right, certain teams kind of repeatedly, and then people will say, "Oh, Geos, please mention my project," right? And I might check it out. We actually have to be very careful about who we associate ourselves with on the chain, right? Like, but at the same time, Ronin is open, so that means that a lot of scammers, right, they might come to the chain. You're gonna have to do your own research, and we will have to be relatively careful about who we help promote, but we may also sometimes make mistakes. What I saw was that there was a huge, right, okay, Pixels came to Ronin. Pixels blew up. Pixels did well. And then a lot of teams, they wanted to come, they wanted to try to be the next Pixels, the next Axie, and a lot of them failed, right? But their bodies, the corpses of those projects, created a pathway for the current winners to pass over, right? So, teams like Moku, Fableborn, Cambria, Fishing Frenzy, Angry Dynamites, Ragnarok Online, right? They learned a lot from the bad teams that failed. And the community learned a lot as well, right? It was unfortunate that a lot of those teams that came right after Pixels failed, right? I think that they were short, in some ways they made a lot of mistakes. They might have been able to raise more funds than they deserved because of the market climate, right? So I think that was I do think that was a necessary era that you had to go through. That even happened on Ethereum, right? When I first came to Ethereum, right, what was I doing on chain? Right, other than CryptoKitties, it was like proof of weak hands, shrimp farmer, right? Like some really, really shitty apps back in the day when, right, people were just first starting to explore, right? So that I kind of see, right, a lot of what happened after Pixels as necessary, where you had to have this kind of culling of the horde, you had to have of the herd, you had to have this evolutionary process where a lot of teams failed. So, and Sven says, I were invested on Pixieland, but that thing sadly happens. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it can happen, right? Teams either give up or they either have bad intentions, they give up, they're weak, they're mentally weak people, or they're untalented people, right? So there are a lot of ways to fail. You can be mentally weak, you can be untalented, and there are a lot of ways for teams to fail, and a lot of teams are going to fail, right? 90% of games fail in real life, in the real world, right? 90 to 95%. Nobody really cares too much other than the teams themselves when they fail in Web 2, because in Web 2, the teams don't have any way of, right, creating some incentive alignment with the community, right? No, you don't care about like a Steam game shutting down, pretty early in development, unless you happen to be like one of the very, very passionate players of that game. But you don't feel any monetary issue when a Steam game shuts down. In Web3, right, because of the different fundraising mechanisms, because of tokens, because of NFTs, when a team gives up or shuts down, right, like you feel it in a way that you don't feel in Web 2. That's part of what's special about the space, but that's also, right, part of the risk, right? So yeah, but I think, right, let's focus on the positive, right? The positive is that you have teams like Moku, Cambria, Fableborn, Pixels continuing to go, right? You still have all the best interesting stuff on Ronin, right? There are two games that are interesting that aren't on Ronin. They're Gigaverse and On-Chain Heroes. So hopefully one day they come to Ronin, and then we would have every single interesting Web3 game. So that's kind of how I think about things. I don't judge myself on like how many failures there have been on Ronin, because the more games there are, the more failures there are going to be. What I try to judge ourselves on is, do we have a majority of the most interesting games right now? And that answer is yes, right? But what is today about is making sure that if we have the majority of those games and they're doing well, we need to make sure that that makes Ron go up.
And one other thing I want to add too is that we want these games to come, and we want new games to want to come and build on Ronin, right? There's what we can do is make it as appealing a place for these builders to come and build, and give them the space that they need to do what they need to do, right? Fableborn, they took a long time to release season 4, right? But it was worth it. Some of these teams that have been building, even Pixels, they've been on Ronin for a long time now. And so some of these innovations just take time. We're seeing the fruits of some of those efforts, right? We're seeing Cambria's having a huge moment, right? Fableborn's having huge moments. Moku's doing really well. Fishing Frenzy's proof of contribution system kind of helps us. It informs a little bit our proof of distribution system, right? And this kind of thing is only possible when you have a chain that is there, that's not changing, in ways that are unpredictable to builders. So we can't control everyone who comes, right? We can't protect everybody from everything, because builders are going to come, builders are going to go. But if we create, the soil for these builders to plant their seeds in, and we can make it as fertile as possible, then the idea with all these changes, with the Ron tokenomics changes, with proof of distribution, the idea is that everyone here benefits. It's a win-win for everyone who's part of the Ronin community. Yeah, good things take time. Yeah. Thanks, Dashrin. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so that I also feel like, I feel you, right? Like I feel annoyed at like a lot of these games that came to Ronin right after Pixels, and created some hype, but weren't able to live up to their to what they promised. And I think they try to rush things, to be honest, right? They're like, oh, it's a bull market, we need to like rush things, right? And you making decisions with that sort of FOMO, right? Like that, right? Like if you make decisions based on FOMO, you're gonna lose. And actually builders get FOMO too. And I think that's what happened to a lot of these builders is, right, like they wanted to be the next Pixels, so they FOMO'd, they rushed things. Whereas the teams that took their time and experimented and kept trying different new things, right, those are the teams that eventually did well, right? So Fableborn is an example, right, where they took a while actually to build their game. A lot of people were saying, oh, they're not launching anything, and then boom, they launched their season, they launched a token, and that went really well, right? So they actually took their time, right? Cambria, they only launched their seasons once every 6 months, but they continue to get better with each launch, right? Moku, right, they went on even side quests, right? They built like they built like that platform for social engagement. I don't even remember what it's called.
Quest.
No.
You mean?
Yeah, so it was like the thing that we use for Genkai, right?
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but that social incentivization platform, they built Tamo Meme, right? So they had to build a lot of things to finally find something. But right, like Mokis have done really well, and have done really well throughout that process. So yeah, Victomet says, how many new games are coming to Ronin? That's not something that we know about, to be honest, right? Like, we're still talking to teams, but what I want is like, I want the best games on Ronin, right? So there are only two games outside of Ronin that I'm interested in right now, and I'll say that out loud to the world, right? It's like Gigaverse and On-Chain Heroes. So those are the only teams that I want. Otherwise, anyone else is welcome to come. Silly Kitty's coming, nice. Okay, boom. Yeah, I see Silly Kitties as an IP, which is also, larger in some ways than just a game, right? Um, More potential in some ways than just something that's a game, right?
All right. It seems like questions are slowing down.
Valger has a question.
All right.
I once had a call with Valger. When Ronin profile quests. So yeah, I mean, maybe we're currently looking at like BRON and the honor system, so potentially through that. How about some other currently on Ronin chain title? Example, Kydra. Yeah, I mean, I think Kydra, right? It's like Kydra was interesting as an IP, but they really tried to make a game, which wasn't their specialty, and I think that's kind of where they got stuck. I think that was a mistake, and maybe they can come back, but I don't know. Like, I haven't really looked at it in a really a fucking long time, right? Like, I'm thinking about the winners. I'm not thinking about the losers. And you can basically see, right? You can kind of see, right? Like by what I tweet about, by what's on my mind, what I think potentially is interesting. Travis, is there a migration date? Late March is the target for the migration. There are a couple of partners, like exchange partners, that are asking for an extension. That's kind of actually why the date is a little bit flexible. We're ready to go, and we could do it late March, but some of the exchanges are asking for a little bit of extra time. So yeah, it's not really focusing on the positive, to be honest, Kagi. It's just focus on the winners, ignore losers, right? That's how I live my life. That's how I hope you guys will live your life as well. And I think the tricky thing, right, is like Pixels did really well. People had a lot of money, right, and then they invested a lot, or they bought into that next generation of builders right after Pixels, where they would have probably been better holding off, right, waiting for Fableborn, waiting for Cambria or whatever, right? So I think that's a little bit the dynamic, is that a lot of people, right, they deployed a lot of capital into shitty builders when Ron was at $4, because right, that's when these people were capitalizing on FOMO a bit. So that's just the reality of life sometimes. And Victo still has hope for Kydro. Like, I mean, that'll be great, right? They're still here, like, whatever. Like, everyone is always gonna have hope for their bags, right? That's the beauty and the curse of crypto. What's going to happen to Elron? Yeah, we talked to Owl, right? So it's like Elron will basically be sunset. Will people automatically have their Ron unstaked, or
Also, they need to unstake themselves.
what if they don't unstake and the validator shuts down?
Oh, it's fine. They can still do it later.
Okay, so yeah, there's no really pressing need to unstake them. Will there be changes for creators when we go to L2? Yeah, I mean, so what I want to do with creators is I want to make the system more meritocratic. Obviously there are a lot of changes in the creator economy right now with Twitter, with X. So I want to, move towards a system where we're incentivizing people based on their performance more, and also incentivizing people to look at other platforms beyond just the Twitter bubble, right? Like everyone knows, right? It's like Twitter, boom, like you have the community where you're kind of just preaching to the choir, right? Twitter is you're just preaching to the choir, and we need to move beyond to new platforms. Elron plus Bron equals LeBron. True.
Souls Always On has a question about Ronin profiles in the beta house. So if you guys have questions about that, about profiles, Ronin products, right? Ronin wallet, tag me on X. And I mean, tag Ronin Vanguard, but tag me in particular. And I work right next to the team, so I can ask them, I can get more info. If you have specific suggestions or things you want to see right in profiles, that helps too. You know, if there's something you really want to see in the beta house, for example, you want to see it have a new animation or something like that, then don't hold back. Just say it. Tag me on X, let me know. I'll bring it to the team. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, so okay. I think we're good to go. Like, so just, wanted to give you guys a preview of some of the changes that are coming. I'll put out, we're gonna put out some summaries. We'll put out some clips. I'm gonna put out an article about the upcoming changes as well. And yeah, so basically migration is imminent. The testnet stuff has gone really well. Migration imminent. We're destroying inflation. We're making Bron. My wife said to say this. We're making Ron more rare by fixing the inflation issue, right? So we're making Ron more rare for every one of you guys, making each one of your Ron more special, more valuable in the long run. And we're fixing the incentive alignment so that when apps and games are winning on Ronin, so is the Ron token. So that's also what we're fixing. And yeah, the proof of distribution system is coming, which we believe is a major innovation. And it's based on what we wanted or what we believed would work as builders, right? This is the first chain really built by application developers, right? Like we built Axie and then we built a chain. There's actually no other chains like that. All other chains, it's like they just built the chain from a research standpoint rather than right what builders would actually want.
All right. Okay, I think we're good to wrap it up. And before we go, I'll leave you guys with my closing remarks too, some of my thoughts. I mean, I've been part of the Ronin community for a while now. I've been here for a long time, since the DPoS migration, since before the DPoS migration. And I've seen the chain evolve through a lot of different eras. Each one brought surprises, surprises and challenges. I remember before DPoS, right, which was a similar migration, right, the chain. There was just Axie on Ronin. That was all there was. And then it was this big deal that we were going to get 5 games, right? There were going to be 5 new games on Ronin. And that was only a couple of years ago. Now we've got tons of games. Now we have not just tons of games, but we have Fableborn, right? We have Kimbria, we have Moku, we have Axie, and Axie is also evolving in its own right. And so when I think about this migration, this is kind of like a new chapter for Ronin that's opening up. And we're really at the beginning of the new chapter. We're at the day 1 of a totally new era, and it's exciting. So, if you have feedback, if you have suggestions, we are listening. We want to do more of these town halls. We want to talk to you guys. We want to connect with you guys. We're building this in real time. So think of it like this is a bit of a blank slate and we're walking, or charting a new course together, right? I'm glad you guys could come to the town hall. It's good to connect like this.
Yeah, it's been good. So let's do more of these, right? It shouldn't be like a special occasion. We'll do more of these. And much easier now that I'm in the office, to be honest. So we'll do more of these. And yeah, so wanted to give an update on how we're thinking about the migration. Also give an updated date. But yeah, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys on I'll see you guys in the Discord. I'll see you guys on Twitter. I'll see you guys in Moku Grand Arena. Yeah, probably like my to-do list for today is I'm gonna, make my lineups for Grand Arena. I'm gonna check out the Cambria sale. I'll probably put 10 ETH into the Cambria sale, just so you guys know. So people might want to know, like, what are my new responsibilities or what's changing, right? So Alex left, right? Alex, we were at a stage with the company, right, where it's like people either need to double down on crypto and be like, yo, I'm not fucking leaving and I totally believe in this thing. If they're not fully there, they're not fully, right, like, they're not willing to die or dedicate their life to what we're doing, then, right, it's better to move on, right? And that's basically the point that we got with Alex, is that he has a family now, right? He has other things he couldn't do what we did 7 years ago and move back to Vietnam, right? So, but I am, right? So I'm moving to Vietnam. I'm going all in because why? The world is getting more chaotic. I believe that, right, in a world of AI, crypto is going to be more important. As the world gets more chaotic, right, governments are going to be in a lot of trouble, and that we're creating this alternative system, right, an alternative way of life, alternative money rails, and that especially as AI kind of starts to take a lot of people's jobs and sense of meaning, like creating meaning on chain and right doing these things, hanging out, having friends that have similar interests, hobbies, right, doing something that's making you productive but isn't the old type of work. These are the things that are actually going to do really well. That was actually the original thesis behind Play to Earn. I think you can kind of see some of my tweets from 2019, 2020, right? Because I used to talk to Andrew Yang. Like, I've even talked to Andrew Yang about this, was that, hey, like, Andrew Yang was like 6 years too early saying that AI is coming, so we need UBI. And my contention is that, Play to Earn is a better form of UBI because, right, like there's some dignity of work and there's things that you need to do. So obviously, right, like things are changing a little bit. But generally, that's kind of how I see things, right? So, I still believe in this movement, and for me to double down, I needed to get closer to HQ, right? So I have more, visibility into all the things that are happening across Axie and Ronin now. And whereas, right, when I was living in the US, right, it's like a lot of people are working while I'm sleeping, right? There are things or decisions that get made just right because they need to be made quickly while I'm asleep. So a lot of things can slip through the cracks while I'm not here. But now it's like if there's a problem and people can come to me, I can get it fixed. If there's a decision that needs to be made, and I can help make it and make sure that things aren't really slipping through the cracks. So yeah, that's basically what I was thinking. That's basically what I was thinking when I moved to Vietnam, right? Is that, yeah, I need to, right, go all in, and I can't do that while living someplace else. And that's also the story behind, Alex leaving, is like he understood that he had to either go all in or move on with his life. That's the decision that he made, and I respect it, right? Like I always, will have amazing memories of working with Alex and moving here to Vietnam like 6 years ago. And I think that's the end of the story. He's going to continue to be right, involved as a board member, and so it's not like he's totally out of the ecosystem. Any chance of run on Hyperliquid like AXS? Yeah, that's up to the Hyperliquid community, right? So I think AXS went on Hyperliquid. Boom. Now, this obviously increases the chance, right? So. Rista says the team is moving faster with me here. Yeah, I mean, I want to increase their sense of urgency, right? Like increase the sense of urgency, increase the experimentation. Yeah, it also means that if we do more, we might make more mistakes. But hopefully, yeah, you guys appreciate it. Okay, I think that's basically it. I'm also now closer to the Philippines, so shout out to Kagi and Gunlock and everybody who helped. Everybody who helped with the meetup in the Philippines a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I'm now much closer, so should be able to come through a bit more. rather than just like once per year. So during YGG. So yeah, level of focus, right? Is like we need to be focused, we need to be locked in, we need to fucking right like live here. You need to be where the action is happening. So yeah, hopefully you guys got an overview, right? Like, I think right, the TLDR is migration is happening, right? That it should be within, 30 to 40 days, I would say. And we're going to be making the inflation dynamics better for Ron. Ron is going to get more rare. We're going to be increasing the treasury inflows, right, and implementing Ron governance. So that should be better for the demand side of Ron. Inflation is fixing the supply side of Ron, and the proof of distribution system should be better for builders on Ron, which in turn is also better for users. So I think we're covering all of the different archetypes of ways that people want to interact with the network here.